Hal Stewart is one of the weirdest characters in cinema history. He starts as a forgettable cameraman, harmless, invisible, and easy to ignore. But by the end of the movie, he is flying over Metro City, trying to rule it. So what happened? How come he turned evil when he seemed so good initially? It turns out that there was one fatal mistake about Hal Stewart that created Titan. One that started early. If you look at this scene very closely, you'll understand exactly what we mean. After Megamind's prologue in the movie, we see Roxanne give an incredible delivery ahead of the unveiling of Metro Man's museum.
This is Roxanne Ritchie reporting live from the dedication of the Metro Man Museum.
From that first appearance, you can tell that she's definitely a 10. She has brains, looks, and charisma. However, standing in front of her is someone who is the polar opposite. Roxanne's cameraman, Hal Stewart. From their very first exchange, the imbalance is obvious. Unlike Roxanne, Hal is physically unremarkable, unfashionable, and unsure of himself. He hangs on every word Roxanne says, laughs too fast, and agrees too quickly. To say that the dude is smitten would be an understatement. Every time he opens his mouth, it's in an attempt to rizz her up, even though what he says is mostly creepy.
And I'd be watching you like a dingo watches a human baby.
This is the foundation of Hal's fatal mistake. But perhaps the craziest part is that Hal doesn't know how to stand by his words. Remember when he told Roxanne that the stuff they make her read on air is crazy? This was how Hal actually felt about what she reports on TV. However, when Roxanne pushes back and says she wrote the pieces she reported, Hal instantly switches up. And as if that wasn't bad enough, he smiles, jokes, and awkwardly asks her out for coffee.
Nice save, Hal.
What are we, like, let's just get a coffee or something?
That pattern never breaks. For Hal, everything filters through one thought: Roxanne. Even when the moment calls for professionalism, he slides toward flirtation. And when nothing is happening, bro is performing for her. But do you know what's insane? The creators of Hal deliberately made him this way because it will later explain that one fatal mistake that we will come to see. Because while you may think Hal's character is harmless and innocent, it really isn't. And even psychology agrees. Being agreeable isn't a bad thing. However, when it's done too much, you get labeled a simp pretty fast. Now, mix that up with not being honest or standing by your words, and you get a disaster for a personality. But another major flaw of Hal that we noticed early is that he has no purpose beyond what he wants from someone else or from video games and junk food. When you compare him with the other three main characters, it's clear where he stands in terms of personal struggles. While Megamind grapples with not having an arch-nemesis, Roxanne tries to make peace with the fact that a supervillain rules her home city. And then there's Hal, who wants one thing: the love and affection of his coworker. His motivation is shallow, and his approach is lame. There's even this other crazy scene that reveals another big issue with Hal. Roxanne is on air, openly grieving. She talks about loss, regret, and a city left unprotected. When the camera cuts, she is still carrying that weight, and anyone can clearly see that. Everyone except Hal.
And wrap that up.
Of course. The moment the segment ends, he jumps into an invitation. A party, a DJ, and a bouncy house. His pitch has nothing to do with what just happened on screen. It's planned, rehearsed, and completely detached from Roxanne's emotional state. Even when she hesitates, he escalates. He reframes the party as something private. Then he brings up the wedding photographer as a practical step, already paid for, already imagined. That tells you a lot about Hal. He is not reacting to Roxanne, but to a version of her that exists only in his head. Even her refusal does not stop him. He turns it into a soft yes and walks away, confused and frustrated that his plan failed.
What's wrong with me? Renting a bouncy house? Chicks don't like bouncy houses, they like clowns!
That scene shows a man who cannot read grief, cannot adjust to context, and cannot separate another person's reality from his own wants. This is so important because it explains everything that comes next, and you really need to take note of all this because this is where things really start to get out of hand. There is a moment in this movie that fundamentally shifts the story and Hal's path. It happens during what looks like a throwaway gag. There's a blast, a confused cameraman, and a joke about a bee flying up someone's nose. That moment creates Titan, but to understand why that accident matters, we have to rewind. When Roxanne believes she has found Megamind's secret lair, Hal is outside waiting for her. He's doing what he always does, hovering nearby, ready to play hero if the moment presents itself. In his head, this is already a rescue. He imagines danger, so he imagines courage and how the story ends. But of course, none of that lines up with reality. Meanwhile, inside the lair, Megamind is panicking because Roxanne is asking the wrong questions and his disguise is slipping. The situation is chaotic, loud, and increasingly out of control. When Roxanne threatens Megamind with a strange-looking gun, she has no idea what it does. But Megamind does. It is an extractor gun that contains Metro Man's DNA. So while they were struggling over it, the device went off. Its content bounced through a ventilation duct, zigzagged through a maze of pipes, and shot directly up the nose of Hal. Hal ends up getting injected with Metro Man's DNA, and by extension, his godlike powers and his Herculean physique. He certainly doesn't earn this moment. Dude doesn't even understand it. When we cut back to him, he is holding his nose, confused, already spinning a story about ninjas and bravery that never happened. This matters. Megamind never chose Hal. In fact, he does not even know who Hal is. The entire plan was built around finding a replacement for Metro Man, someone worthy of the role.
We must find a suitable subject, someone noble heart and mind.
The irony here is thick. As Minion rightfully points out while reviewing Hal's file, this is a man who is 28 years old, with no criminal record, but also no records of any kind. Apparently, this man has never accomplished anything in his entire life. Hal is a total vacuum of ambition, yet Megamind refuses to see the mistake. He looks at this unremarkable cameraman and declares that this is no mistake, but destiny. So what does Big Blue do? He tries to radicalize Hal and make him the virtuous hero he intended. He tries to mentor and coach him into being a superhero.
Stomach down, hands up, like Metro Man!
He succeeds in physically conditioning him, but when it came to changing his core beliefs and his psyche as a whole, Megamind failed. However, he didn't fail for a lack of effort. In fact, he couldn't have tried any harder. It's just that he was never going to succeed, and here's why. Titan got his powers handed to him, and that's where the problem lies. Yet this isn't the fatal mistake of this character. Maybe Megamind's fatal mistake. But as far as Titan is concerned, there are the circumstances that allow him to blindly go about doing things without thinking twice about the consequences. You see, Hal goes through superficial change without a matching internal transformation. And when results come before work, which often happens in the case of instant gratification, there is no value in the outcome. While Metro Man grew up being molded into the noble hero he is, Hal was a character with an unchangeable mentality before the powers came. So basically, Megamind only succeeded in making Titan a danger to himself and the city. If we look at the science of psychology, specifically the Nietzschean model of slave morality, we will understand better. This model basically implies that when morally weak men are handed power, they would rather serve their own petty desires than the greater good. They don't want to lift people up, but punish the world for how they felt when they were weak. This is exactly what we see happen. Even before Titan could commit a single heroic act, he had already started robbing banks.
What's this?
Where did you get all this stuff?
It doesn't belong to me.
You stole it!
But here's the really crazy bit. Titan and Hal are still the same person. They may have different physiques and capabilities, however, they have the same essence and shallow mindset. Basically, they are different vessels with the exact same content. So now that he has power, Titan can mask his insecurities and bury his nature under a display of strength instead of having his fragile ego out on display as Hal did. And when a person who doesn't like the word no becomes someone who physically won't take it, bad things are guaranteed to happen. The funny thing is, all these bad things became really intense after one scene revealed the fatal mistake that ruined Hal Stewart for good. In the penultimate phase of Titan's arc, he tries to win Roxanne over after believing his new power is the bridge between him and finally being with her. After all, Megamind himself helped reinforce this during his brief stint with him.
That's what I hear.
All you have to do is save her, and she'll be yours.
But when Titan tries to give Roxanne flowers, this sentence summarizes why he fails to get Roxanne's attention despite his efforts.
Brought some flowers. Didn't know what you liked, so I just grabbed, all of them.
He really doesn't know Roxanne, so he's throwing everything at her and hoping something sticks. Before he had powers, he was a poor listener. Now that his powers have given him false confidence, he feels entitled to anything he wants. That's why when Roxanne finally voices out that having him be a superhero doesn't make her attracted to him, he's shocked.
Us, okay? There will never be an us.
But I have powers.
And that right there shows us what Hal's fatal mistake was. When you think about it, nobody should know Roxanne better than Hal. He stands 3 feet away from her every day. No coworker spends more time with her than him, yet he doesn't even know her favorite flower. He was so fixated on what he thought Roxanne wanted that he believed his imagination and reality to be one and the same. And all he had to do to know the difference was open his ears and listen instead of trying to smooth talk his way into a romantic relationship with her. What's both funny and sad is how Titan still doesn't realize the mistake he made. To him, he didn't get Roxanne because she was too invested in Bernard/Megamind, when truthfully, Roxanne never paid him any attention. After all, he didn't take the time to get to know her, because if he did, he would know that she was never even head over heels for Metro Man, so there was no way she'd fawn over a copycat. Roxanne has a personality and a life outside of being a news reporter, but that's a side only Bernard got to see, because he was willing to take the time to listen to her and make her feel heard. If Titan didn't believe he made a mistake, there's no way he'll try to come correct. So how does he react to this? Dude doesn't even have the decency to take Roxanne back home. Getting rejected is bad, but believing in something so passionately only to have it blow in your face is tragic. She was his goal, the reward he believed he earned by simply being able to fly and shoot lasers. So once he realizes that power does not guarantee her affection, his interest in being a hero disappears. And the crazy thing is that he has never even committed to being good. This is why when Megamind calls him out for refusing to help people, Titan's response makes perfect sense.
Being a hero is for losers. It's work, 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 24/7, and for what?
So when Megamind eventually reveals that he was the one disguising himself as Roxanne's love interest, Hal went berserk. Rather than reflect on what he got wrong, he prefers to get even with Megamind. His transformation from a humble cameraman to a city-level threat is driven by what psychologists call narcissistic injury. When Roxanne rejects him, it shatters his fragile ego, and because Hal lacks the emotional maturity to process shame, he converts that shame into externalized rage. He blames Bernard, he blames Megamind, and he blames the city, but he never blames himself. So, by refusing to take accountability, he remains trapped in a state of arrested development. He's a man-child with the powers of a god, proving that while Megamind grew through the courage to change, Hal Stewart shrank through the cowardice of staying the same, just with a bigger fist to swing. But can we really blame him? For the majority of the movie, Titan has had the short end of the stick. Someone else gets his girl, he gains powers he wasn't prepared for, and even when he thinks it's enough to win her, he gets rejected again. Now, it wouldn't be absurd to sympathize with that. After all, he was just being a nice guy. The only problem is that niceness was never real. So by the last act of the movie, it's clear that Titan is the big bad of this film.
Oh, I wouldn't say free, more like under new management.
Megamind is actually trying to save Metro City from him, which is ironic because he always wanted to be the one the city needed saving from. They say nice guys finish last, but Titan is proof that they can also finish as villains. Emotionally and mentally weak men should not be entrusted with power because it corrupts, and a fragile ego mixed with insecurity is a disaster waiting to happen. So Titan only went from bad to worse to beyond saving. There was no talking sense into him. Roxanne tried talking him into being good, but guess how that ended?
Please don't do this. I know there's still good in you, Hal.
You're so naive, Roxy.
Nevertheless, like many movies, the villain has to be stopped. And soon, Titan met his end when Megamind took away the powers he gave him by accident. But what's truly insane is that Hal is one hell of a character for so many reasons. In fact, he's one of those few villains that was written to perfection, and here's why. Hal Stewart is a masterpiece of character writing because he subverts every trope we've been taught about the underdog. In most stories, the invisible, dorky cameraman is the hero in waiting, the guy who just needs a chance to show his noble heart. But DreamWorks did something brilliant and incredibly bold with Hal. They showed us that sometimes the underdog isn't a hero in disguise. Sometimes he is a disaster waiting for an upgrade. Hal is the ultimate deconstruction of the nice guy archetype. And the way his character is constructed from the very first frame is nothing short of genius. Just to look at the fatal mistake that defines him, his motivation is his desire to win Roxanne's heart. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, a character having a love interest is one of the oldest cliches in movie writing. But his beliefs and methods are terrible and creepy. When we first meet him, he acts like a kid looking for approval. When he made that comment about watching Roxanne like a dingo watches a human baby, it's framed as a joke, but it's a massive red flag. It reveals his subconscious view of her, not as a peer or a partner, but as prey to be watched and eventually captured. Roxanne does get captured all right. In fact, this boss lady of a diva does get smitten, just not by a conventionally attractive individual flexing his superpowers. She's wooed by nothing more than the power of a listening ear. Because with someone listening, she feels safe to be vulnerable, safe to express herself outside of her life as a hot news reporter. Hal, on the other hand, treats kindness as a transaction. He believes that if he deposits enough niceness tokens into the Roxanne Ritchie vending machine, love and sex will eventually fall out. Worse, he reframes her boundaries as obstacles, and his delusional entitlement makes him believe the universe literally owes him her affection. This psychological rot is what makes the moment he gets his powers so terrifying. This is where the writing elevates Hal into a truly compelling villain. He undergoes a massive superficial change without a single matching internal transformation. The tragedy of Hal Stewart is that everything he wanted was right under his nose, but he was too entitled to approach it the right way. And to make things worse, he doubled down on his terrible methods until he became a creature beyond saving. He's a tragic character because he's so deeply human in his flaws. His insecurity, jealousy, and inability to take no for an answer are things we see in the real world every day. This is why the creators of Hal deserve all the praise you can give them. Because to take a dork, turn him into a jerk with the powers of a god, and show his inevitable descent into villainy is a stroke of narrative genius. But while Titan is a tragic villain, one thing he isn't is a villain who should have won. In case you're wondering if there are any villains who should have succeeded over the heroes, we have a video just for you. We also broke down why and how writers make the bad guys lose, even when they don't deserve to. So go check it out now.